Alright, for question 6, we have this. I want to create a new solution that's I times x2 minus x1 and I times y2 minus y1. So I've got to figure out what those are. So I times x2, which is over here, e to the minus t times cosine of t minus I sine of t minus e to the minus t times cosine of t plus I sine of t. What we're going to do is subtract those two, so I can factor out my e to the t, and I have a cosine of t minus I sine of t minus cosine of t minus I sine of t. And if you look at this, you'll notice that the two cosine terms will add up to 0, and you'll get a minus I squared sine of t from that, and that's all multiplied times an I, and sorry, not I squared, just I times an I and e to the minus t, and we do all our math. I get minus I squared e to the minus t times sine of t, and then I squared is equal to -1, so this turns out to be this. So that's my new x. And we do the same thing with the y. So I have I times my y, which I'm going to have my y2 as -1 minus I. Sorry, minus I times e to the it times cosine of t minus I sine of t. And I'm going to subtract off -1 plus I times e to the minus t times cosine of t plus I sine of t. So I can factor out an e to the minus t, and let's do the algebra here. I got minus cosine of t plus I sine of t, and then I have a minus I cosine of t minus I squared sine of t. And then I've got this algebra over here I need to deal with. So let's deal with that. I've got a minus cosine of t minus I sine of t plus I cosine of t plus I squared sine of t, all multiplied times your minus sign. So I got a minus and a plus, so this cancels with this, and I got an I sine of t here, and where do I have another I sine? And I got a plus, so that's going to leave me with a 2. So that's 2. That's 2. This creates 2. And then I have a minus cosine of t with another minus cosine of t. So that's a minus 2I cosine of t. And that's what I'm going to call 3. And then I have a minus I squared sine of t minus another I squared sine of t. And that's going to give us a minus sorry, I think I messed up on a sign here. I have a minus and a minus, that's a plus. There we go. So that's a plus I squared sine of t, a minus I squared sine of t, so that's going to be 0. So, and then we multiply through by our i's, and I have I squares that turn to -1, so I get e to the minus t times the minus 2 sine t minus or plus 2 cosine of t. And that's my new y. So now we got to check it with our differential equation. So that's yn. So we know that the derivative of x has to equal y. So I got to take the derivative of my x, and my x is up here, e to the minus t sine of t. So the derivative of the first is minus e to the minus t times sine of t. And then I've got my derivative of my second. Which is plus e to the minus t times the derivative of sine, which is cosine of t.